Go.
Hello.
Hi, Dr.
Hello.
Mohsen. Dr. Mohsen, good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Rudy?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm delighted to see you again.
Wonderful. And same in here. It's a pleasure always to talk to you. Let me just introduce you to the public because this is the first time that they see this. We have with us our very good friend, Rudy Verbeeck, who's Rudy, an avid scholar, and he's a good friend, and he's uh, volunteered to read a paper which I believe is on negative aliens. He will tell you more about it. And uh, actually, I'm going to give this whole thing to Rudy because he's you are a very capable person. So go ahead and introduce yourself, the program, everything. Go ahead, Rudy.
Thank you, Dr. Mohsen, thank you. Yeah, my name is Rudy Verbeeck, Verbeek, as we say in Flemish, because I live in Antwerp, Belgium. That's where I grew up. I'm an engineer as education, but also I'm an artist and I'm a writer, and so my career has been in the technology of animation, 3D animation, and creating animation in every sense of the word. So um, expressing, making people express themselves through animation is basically has been my passion. Besides that, I've been reading a lot. I've been reading all my life, researching about the, the essence of who we are, and researching about the true history of humanity. And it's been a special journey, actually, to discover more and more about who we are as human beings. And it's not so long ago that we found, and this Isabel and me, we found you online because there was information out of a dream. Sometimes we are acting as a system where clearly I'm the receiver and she's the manifester, and she was basically coming up with some keywords. We have to look this up, and your papers suddenly start popping up, and I was really intrigued by all the information that you are basically giving us and giving to humanity as a service. So, and that's why we got into contact, and we started these wonderful conversations. Um, the reason why I decided to start with the negative alien issue today is because I notice among friends and among people that I talk to that there's a lot of confusion about the subject. People are not really aware of the magnitude, the impact that the negative alien agenda has right now and has had over the history. People are often referring or referencing papers that or scriptures from ancient times, saying, "Oh, this must be true because it's written 3,000, 4,000 years ago," while they don't understand that the human history has been heavily manipulated, and everything you read in the last 11,000 years or so has actually already been manipulated, and how far the manipulation really goes, as into nature on Earth. People, there's nothing more true than nature, but nature itself is like it has been manipulated through the change of the time-space matrix, the time-space dimension, and so there's a lot of confusion about negative aliens and about the dark, and which we often is referred to the dark side as being the negative aliens and what they represent, and the shadow side within people. So there's this confusion where people hear you like you have to embrace the dark, and it's like part of you. It's like tell people, no, it's not. That's not what it is about. It's like there should not be a dark. So that's why I decided to start with this too, and I hope people it will help people to see actually the magnitude of what's going on. If that's okay with you, Dr. Mohsen.
That's wonderful. That's a very good start. And
Okay.
just tell them how you said Isabel found me, right?
Yes, yes. Isabel, she woke up out of um, a dream. Well, let's call it a dream, where she had to. She has this urge, this command, almost like to search for certain keywords online. And those keywords, when she typed in those keywords, I don't remember the exact keywords. The documents that popped up were your documents, basically all links to your WordPress sites. And so then I found you in academia, and that's when I decided to write you in academia, and then we started getting going. But it was from that dream of Isabel, and then we get these interactions, we get this information out of dreams regularly, like multiple times a week. So we get this hints, information downloads, and that's how we found you.
And are you still reading, or just stopped? Just,
We decided actually to read every day now. So we read every day. We like yesterday we were reading the same paper, and then we discuss it afterwards, and we share like insights, and so it has become of a habit to read every day one or more of your papers, and it's actually it helps just to create this awareness, when because the more you read them, the more you are aware of the of what is really going on, and you look with a different eye at everything that's going on around you. So it's very important for us.
wonderful. I think you make a very great addition to our soul family member, and
Thank you.
can also help the effort in all kinds of things with your
Yes.
podcast and
Yeah.
education and everything.
Absolutely. And I would.
Isabel, hmm?
Sorry.
By the way, Isabel is what? It's a psychologist, right?
Isabel is a clinical psychologist, so she has her own, let's say, office where she receives patients. And of course, in the last years, it's very noticeable that she has more and more patients having it very difficult to cope with all of the corona, the COVID measures that have been taken all over the world, and also here in Belgium, where people are being isolated and people lose their businesses and don't have contact with families and friends, and so a lot of depressions, a lot of people with suicidal thoughts. So it's very tough being a psychologist right now.
Right. I think understanding the existence of negative aliens, first of all, is going to be tremendously helpful because people realize that there is an outside element because they feel so hopeless and helpless. God, what's going on? Where is God? And that kind of thing. And
Mhm.
then there are certain things, as you were talking about the shadow selves and stuff, is that it takes over and people don't understand themselves. Why am I feeling like this when I don't want to feel like this? When I feel like I'm in control, but I'm not in control. I mean, this is all AI. It's all holographically streamed upon us, and they have got into our morphogenetic system with all kinds of holographic inserts and frequency fences and things like this. So these things that we talk about, they're not just something to scare people. Actually, they should entice people to understand themselves. Man has been in search of understanding itself. Who are we? What are we? Where we come from? Where are we going? Why are we here? And I think this is a good start for us because we've not been alone. This
Exactly.
is the we've not been alone. And once we understand that and the nature that has effect on us, I think it's going to help.
Mhm.
So I'm looking forward to your recital.
All right.
Go ahead.
So let's get it on. I'm going to share my screen. Hold on. So I think you see this screen.
You're going to read from WordPress, correct?
So this one from
Or
WordPress.
yeah, this is WordPress, by the way.
So this is WordPress. So this is the paper on the negative aliens. What do they represent? Who are they? By Dr. Ph.D. Mohsen Paul Sarfarazi. So I'll go through this introduction. It's a comprehensive overview of the gestalt of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligent beings, collectively referred to as the negative aliens, that has been presented. It is explicated that these beings comprise of a group of utterly ruthless, merciless beings that are totally void of any feelings, compassion, and love without any heart-based intuitive intelligence. Furthermore, they are energetically parasitic, vampiric, and highly dependent on the natural energetics of organic solar consciousness, beings such as humans to energize their doomsday machinery and survive. In this respect, they resort to violence and wars in search of conquest of organic solar consciousness beings to capture and imprison and subject them to reverse consciousness enslavement using their specially devised artificial intelligence technology. And in order to be able to perpetually siphon the precious divine energies of the organic solar consciousness beings, they strictly adhere to certain agendas and strategies to maintain in bondage their taken spoils of wars. That includes their perceived conquered planetary resources, as well as the solar consciousness inhabitants, such as humans, that they have captured. Being totally arrogant tyrants and utterly narcissistic, perceiving themselves as superiors and even gods of their captured victims, their nefarious agendas include conscious wiping and mind controlling their victims, compelling them to indulge in certain self-destructive behaviors that ensure their perpetual unconscious self-enslavement, relinquishing their precious divine energies to be fed upon. The term negative aliens does not signify a particular species of beings, say draconians, necromitons, etc. Rather, it refers to a gestalt of negative consciousness or artificial intelligence that are anti-God, anti-creation, and anti-organic life, who actually consider themselves superior than organic solar consciousness beings. It is hard to speak of the original ancestors of negative aliens as they themselves no longer know of this truth. However, what may be surmised is that billions of years ago, and even before the advent of creation of our Nebadon universe, a group of then organic solar conscious beings, having become intoxicated with their own power of consciousness and co-creational capabilities bestowed upon them as organic divine conscious beings, became rogue and were arrogant and delusional enough that they wanted to play gods. Therefore, being privy to benefit and utilize the free energy readily supplied by the God source, they did not understand the true nature of God source's fail-safe mechanism with respect to excessive abuse of negative karma, and thus severed their connection to the source. This fundamental fail-safe principle of organic existence in nature asserts that the creation of cosmos is based upon the fundamental dualism principle of creation that mandates what expands away from the God source must inevitably return back to the God source. The very action of expansion and contraction of all things within the cosmos emanates from the God source comprised of infinite neutral quanta of crystalline, coherent, intelligible quanta of energy torsionally vibrating, spinning back and forth, or clockwise, counterclockwise manner in another subtle way. I just want to interject here because there's a lot of confusion also about karma. If you read your papers, then it's very clear what karma, negative or positive karma is. And so that's also something that people within the respect of religion and new age spirituality, let's say, it's often misrepresented what karma really is. So
True.
it's
Quite true.
it's very important to understand this, I think. Um, so this practically renders the God source thriving in sheer stillness, referred to as the now moment, that imploded upon itself as to create the cosmos. In this respect, everything is effectuated, consciousness is disseminated by light, an energetic field that is comprised of two mutually perpendicular constituent fields, referred to as expansive electric male and contractive magnetic female fields. Thus, what expands away from the incipient point of singularity of the God source must inevitably contract back towards the source. This conforms with the dualism principle of creation that indicates that the electric and magnetic field components of the light and everything that is effectuated by IT are formed symbiotically with respect to one another, which also asserts that everything must undergo a vibrational action, sequentially expanding away and contracting back towards the source. Indeed, this is why we undergo a sequence of quantum consciousness vibration, alternating between the worlds of matter, conventionally defined as the quanta of energy spinning counterclockwise about cells, and antimatter, conventionally defined as the quanta of energy spinning clockwise about themselves, giving rise to what the author refers to as conjugate mirrored spacetimes worlds. So everything must effectively behave as a harmonic resonator, resembling a spring with inherent constitutive quanta of energy attached to it, vibrating back and forth in time, sequentially expanding away and contracting back towards the source. So exactly what you refer to as the karma, right? Expanding
Let me
away and contracting. Yes,
may I just interject in here
of
saying
course.
that I refer to the God source as capital it,
Yeah,
because it's not
yeah,
he, it's not she, it's really not it. Okay, so but I refer to it as a capital because
yeah,
it would be not very
yeah,
respectful to call like an
correct.
inanimate thing or it. So it's not IT,
Yeah, sorry.
but that's okay. You can say IT if you want, as long as we understand that whenever you see terms like this, IT itself, you know what I'm saying with
Mhm.
capital, refers to God.
Yep.
Because it's a very singular term that's
Hmm.
only reserved for God.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep. Clear. Um, in this respect, the action of expanding away from the source signifies negative karma, and the converse action of contracting, returning back to the source, represents positive karma, where karma describes the action of storage of energy within the elastic spring that epitomizes the very concept of the soul. Thus, the fail-safe caveat of the creational dynamics asserts that the entropic action of the negative karma must be eventually overcome by the syntropic action of the positive karma. And it is true that having access to the open free energies of the source facilitates or accommodates the process of venturing out, expanding away from the source, in favor of self-discovery to get a unique, up-close and hands-on experience of the sojourns of organic natural life, in whatever form and capacity that might be. But positive production rate of positive karma will ultimately lead to attaining consciousness expansion, returning back to the source with acquiring full self-awareness. In this respect, besides the requisite for attaining consciousness expansion, the mechanics of creation stipulates the principle of free will, as well as it is governed by the mandates that no one ever can interfere with and impede the process of attaining consciousness expansion of any other sentient being. Thus, although you are encouraged to aid the process of consciousness expansion of another, yet this must be accompanied by the principle of consent of the individual and with utter respect to that being's right of free will. Therefore, any attempt to consciously imprison anyone else and subjecting them to any act of oppression and suppression with respect to violating their right of free will, with respect to inhibiting their natural progression of consciousness expansion, is utterly not tolerated. Indeed, and that's what's going on in the whole world right now, isn't it?
Yes, yes, no more.
No more, it has to stop. And in case such an event occurs, the individual itself manages to sever its connection to the source. Furthermore, disconnecting oneself from the God source entails interruption of the natural flow of the free energy supplied by the source. Thus, the individual becomes practically deprived of no longer being able to benefit from the open, free flow of energetic of the source. At this junction, any continued negative karma leading to production of entropy practically consumes the self. And even if the entity stops from such nefarious conducts without reconnecting to the source, it becomes caught in a bi-wave loop of energetic self-consumption and eventually decays, withers, and dies. This also resembles a snake who must consume its own tail and its own body to only temporarily avoid the eventual process of eternal death. It's a symbol, by the way, that's being used by a lot of esoteric societies
Mhm.
and being depicted as the ultimate truth, as eternal life, which is not at all. Um, and this is exactly what happened to the forefathers of the negative aliens billions of years ago in other universes. More pertinent to our condition, these negative aliens who have infested the next adjacent universe to ours were eventually sought out to be subject to collection and being returned to the source. However, a group of them, practically evicted, fled our adjacent universe and landed in the constellation of Orion. It appears that the species who had arrived there with a modicum degree of stolen energy supplies were originally of carrion species, vulture-like birds who, being adept in the science of genetics, subsequently created the reptilians in the swamp of the Orion. The objective of this manuscript is not to present a detailed account of carrion, reptilian, and feline human history, nor to indulge in exploring the birth of human reptilian species, the more details of which may be found elsewhere. The point is that the negative aliens, as we refer to nowadays, are not just confined to what was originally reptilians or their hybrids, or whatever is left from the original reptilian race. The term negative aliens refers to a gestalt of artificial intelligence beings that are fallen from the grace of God. As such, they are anti God, anti creation, and anti life. This group is now comprised of many species that either became fallen themselves and joins this horde of evil beings, or were conquered and captured and were fragmented and or assimilated, who are now forcefully or helplessly in service of them. The example of latter are many refugee races. Few well-known examples include Greys, Zetas, Necromitons, etc. They also include drones and synthetics and cybernetics with artificial intelligence, as well as energetic and some biological parasites. Everything that the negative aliens represent is a reversal, anti-parallel to organic life systems. So while organic solar consciousness beings epitomize sentient beings that are connected to the open energetics supplied by a central source through being effectively linked to the God source, the negative aliens have no connection to the God source. Thus, they are governed by a closed bi-wave energetic system in the form of a black hole Moloch reserve tank of energy that is attained through siphoning stealing energies of the organic solar consciousness energetic beings. As such, they are all parasitic vampiric that commonly use organic solar consciousness beings as batteries to supply energy for them. The most fundamental characteristic of all negative aliens is that they are totally void of any feelings. So, in contrast to human beings and other organic solar consciousness entities who are connected to the God source through the magnetic vibrations of their heart, with the higher sentient beings being comprised of heart based intuitive intelligence, the negative aliens are solely governed by a form of logical circuit provided by their artificial system of intelligence. In this respect, they are utterly void of any compassion, empathy, or love. In fact, they utterly hate humans and other organic solar consciousness beings, which makes them have absolutely no reverence or concern for organic life. To them, we are less than any animals. In fact, they look upon us as mere farm animals, good only for harvesting their energies. And in this respect, they regard us with even less compassion than a farmer would exhibit for its farm animals. The negative aliens also believe in the strict motto of service to self only. In this respect, they are extremely violent and apathic, and with an other warring mentality who seek to only conquer humans and alike and subject them to capturing and imprisonment within the lower dimensions of the first harmonic universe, not above the third dimension or the lower fourth dimensional astral plane. So they have a strict motto of devour and move on, with the attitude of take no prisoners. If their objective is to only to consume and not manage by way of creating a holding pen to imprison the spoils of war. They are governed by a strict hierarchical pyramidal structure in which those who are at the top of the food chain are severely feared and treated with firm obedience. In this respect, the negative aliens stringently believe in the dogma of the survival of the fittest, utterly value only those with brawn and warrior-like qualities. Thus, they severely look down on their females and regard them as weak and shameful. In this respect, they regard them only good as breeder or for their rough sexual amusement. In fact, many of the negative aliens are now void of females in their population. And this transpired either as a result of abusing and killing their own female counterparts, because they were simply ashamed of them, or as a result of being captured and assimilated by other negative alien races, who either killed their females or captured and took them for sexual slavery. An example of this includes the Greys, who, by having annihilated their female population, either in favor of cloning or otherwise, now they find their genetic pool diluted and their race endangered for extinction. This is why they made a treaty with our shadow government to abduct human subjects initially under the false pretense for genetic research, and more correctly, for hybridization to sustain their race in exchange for self-destructive technology. Thus, it goes without saying that the negative aliens, by and large, are extremely abusive to their females, if some races still have any, and utterly misogynous. Generally, these captured and refugee races, they find themselves void of any capability to procreate anyway. Thus, they regard their females as weak and a source of impediment to their race. So,
Very
there we
good.
are.
Thank you.
Thank you. Um, it's very good introduction for a lot of people. I recommend this paper. I recommend it today actually to my children. So you have to read this, and it will help you to understand what is going on in the world. So I encourage them to read them, and I encourage a lot of people to read this paper. And of course, we'll go into the next ones. So um, a lot of people do not understand the impact of it, and that people actually that the people that your make can be your neighbors, your co-workers can actually be not human at all. And so, and that is something that is quite scary. And I notice um, the transition from being the awakening stage, when you are starting to understand how the world works, and then transitioning to the state where you basically are really aware what it is. And for a lot of people, it is a very difficult um, zone to go through, to realize that basically everything that's around you can be fake, so to speak. So how do you how do you recommend people to go about this, to
Uh, about
like,
uh,
because when people start reading this, they are
mhm.
starting to get aware of it. So it a lot of people would even get scared of the idea that this is a reality. Like, so you have people who like back away from it, like I don't want to know about this, and people who want to know more, and they feel themselves as being able to operate more and more difficult in this society, because they don't see the purpose of whatever they're doing anymore, but they need to still need to like um, like perform, or do they need to do whatever they need to do to enable to survive in this world? So it's a very um, dual state, and so it's, for a lot of people, it's difficult to cope with it. So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts on how do you cope with this?
Well, you should realize that basically the information itself in anything, okay, is the majority of the work towards success and achievement of a goal. This is why there are industrial espionage and all this stuff, because whoever gets the information can make something out of it, right? Now, this is somewhat analogous because as soon as you know there is a third party out there, okay, that gives you a sense of relief, you know? For example, people get anxiety attacks for no reason, okay? And they're wondering why. Why am I getting anxiety? Why am I palpitating? Why am I afraid? What am I afraid of? You know? And just not knowing adds to the fear. It accentuates or exasperates the problem, okay? Now, as soon as you think to yourself, whoa, 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 wait a minute, there is a third party and it's not me. Then actually you can use what you have learned in this 3D reality, which is the survival mechanism, to say, you're not doing this to me, okay? Specifically, we're talking about parasitic feeding, right? Parasitic attacks and feeding. You know, I tell you what, even my own daughter had these things, you know, an intelligent person, highly successful, all this, and had anxiety. One time we had to take her to an emergency room. And the doctor comes and says, she's perfect, but she's a very sensitive, loving person, and she's a perfectionist. Okay. And I guess there were some things that were not going against, you know, they were going against her will, which gave the impetus for these parasitic attacks. In other words, when you start worrying, your natural frequency comes down. Okay. Once it comes down, it gets to their realm that they can resonate with it. In other words, you've seen it in these movies, right? Activating the robot, activating the android. It activates these things in you to come and feed on you. Not to mention that you're also in a consciousness field that, literally speaking, they are lurking about and they're hungry and they're looking for energies, but they can only attack the vulnerables. Everything comes, see, this survival of the fittest and all this garbage that Darwin spoke, which of course everything he said was with reference to animals, not human beings. They abused his theories and they stretched it for fear mongering. You know what I'm saying? And for telling that, well, we're like animals. We refer to ourselves as animals. That's ridiculous. That's absurd.
Yeah.
Human being has nothing in common with any animals, apes, whatever, like that. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So basically, when you have this information, you can use that survival mechanism and have a form of, I wouldn't say it's a defensive mechanism, but you become very resolved and say, I'm not going to hurt. You're not going to hurt me. And now I'm not going to worry about it because I know what's going on. I know there's another extra external person. It's kind of like coming to your home and seeing something lurks in the dark. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
It can be very, very, even for a big man, it could be very, very scary. You see, they take a big bat and they want to go and see what it is. And then they go down there and see there's a little mice running around or something like this. And why the person got so afraid, so anxious. And of course, the wife is hiding behind the wife, the husband. Go get him, go get him. You know what I'm saying? But once you go in there and see this, say, well, it's done. Okay. So information is the most important thing. And that's just what we were trying to do in here, bring in the
Yep.
information to people. And as Rudy said, it is a little bit, and I have really refrained from this to introduce negative aliens. And if you go back in the papers, I've talked about karma, all this stuff, but I never brought negative aliens, parasitic feelings, you know what I'm saying? Parasite entities, things of that nature. Even when I saw things such as Archon and this all over the internet, I avoided it, never introduced it. Because the objective is not fear mongering, it's not to make you afraid. But it has come to a situation. First of all, they have concentrated their efforts to really hurt humanity and to get as much loot as they can because they're losing. They're losing the war on consciousness. They know they're going to be evicted. They know that their farm is going to be closed. Okay. So they want to muster as much as they can. They want to extract as much loot as they can. So it's become an issue. I mean, I have every single day, probably 5 to 10 people tell me stories of parasitic feeding, waking up in the middle of the night, doing this, doing that, doing this. And my suggestion to them is that number one, don't be afraid because they can't do anything to you unless you allow them. God has put a fail-safe mechanism in you. It's your free will. Nobody can, attack your consciousness space. It is yours unless you let them. Now, they have done this by sedating us, mind controlling us, blank slating us, putting us through these futile reincarnation. We didn't know what was going on. Now that we know what's going on, they say, aha, none of that. And as soon as you do this, you'll be so surprised that they put their tails between their legs and they're gone before you even have to do anything about it. So that resolved. My daughter was such a sensitive young lady, and she had to be on her own. She lives in New York and stuff like that. It was difficult for her because she was actually my little baby. I tell you, she was my first one. I brought her up on my lap basically when my wife was, just a little story for you, when she was attending the medical school, to become an ophthalmologist. So anyway, when she was on her own, it was like, who do I talk to? How do I deal with this? And all this stuff. And she had to resort to her son. Then she said, what, how come I can't do this? What's going on? Because they started feeding on her as soon as she was vulnerable, concerned, worried. They started doing it. Unless I moved in and I told her, and she wasn't listening to me. She thought it was well, she was listening. She always listens to me, but it's just like, yes, Dad, but let's put this in this philosophical, intellectual, all this stuff. This is my life. You know what I'm saying? People don't want to realize that these things are real. They're not theories. You know what I'm saying? If that was the case, I wouldn't even write about it. Why would I write?
Exactly.
It's to help people.
Yeah.
It's a service.
Yeah.
So it is real.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other remark I get sometimes when people say, yes, I feel so they feel depressive or they feel very sad for whatever situations and people they've done to them, and then I tell them, well, it's of course the influence of the negative alien agenda. I said, yeah, but you can't blame everything. It's easy to blame everything on the negative aliens. It's like not everything that's bad in this world is through the agenda of the negative aliens. So
Actually, it is, Rudy.
it is. That's
It
what I
is. Deep
exactly.
down, it is. I mean, the structure, listen, there is a foundation. There's a structure for this society. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
based upon ego, elitism, narcissism, greed, all this. They call I call what you call seven cardinal sin. Actually, we have another paper on that. We have a couple of papers on that.
The
They
cardinal
brought
sins.
all this stuff. This is how they fell. Okay. Now they brought it, they packaged it into a software, they put it into our planetary grid, planetary logo or brain, which is our collective consciousness, right? So those things are getting streamed upon us, and we believe them as reality, like this is real. It's only real because we think it's real. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Once you say no, that's a old paradigm of reality. Your life totally changes.
Mm-hmm.
I have actually, I'm seeing some things that are even, people are getting better, okay? I see through people who talk to me. But recently I came across a very, very distressing situation in which everything was unprovoked, totally unprovoked. Not
Mm-hmm.
100, well, you can't say 100%, but I'll tell you what it is, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that is, this person started telling me that I don't think they're beautiful, I think they're worthless. And I spent so much time helping this person to heal. You know what I'm saying? Because she wanted to do actually a reading, she wanted to do something on genetics.
Yep.
And I worked with her, worked to build and build and build. I mean, she did it herself. I don't want to take credit for it. She got so enthusiastic, so all this stuff, okay? The day next when she comes, I ask her to one little thing. I'm not going to even go through it because it's not even important. It really is insignificant. She got so afraid that just because I have a different opinion or a question regarding something, I am throwing her in the garbage. I am discarding everything. And it started using these words. And I said, please, please, you're not being discarded. You're not, I don't think you're worthless and stuff. But she went on and on. And you know what? She was so irrational. She, I tried my best. But if somebody doesn't listen, what are you going to do?
There's
When
little you
somebody
can do.
takes off, what are you going to do? You know what I'm saying? I understand totally what happened, and I still have I have, I mean, apart everything that's happened, I don't even want to go through it, but I still totally understood her because she wanted purity. I gave her purity. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
To work towards that, to see that she is really worthy, she can do things. She was going to read a paper, very complicated paper on elusive nature of our genetics. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
The paper is there. You probably have read it. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I know which one. Which one.
It's pretty much, it's very loaded, and because it goes into mainstream science and genetics and evaluates all that stuff, including even quantum mechanics part of it and stuff. Anyway, and I was totally ready to give her to do this, and I said, this is first. She's gonna learn more. She's gonna learn more, and all this stuff. And next day, just one little thing. Did I say you can't read? No. Did I say you're worthless? No. Did I say anything? No. She just took a. What? How would you explain that, Rudy? To me? You tell me that. Because I was not the agent. Now, 99% of the time, I would say the other person shows also ego, shows also fear, anxiety, anger, and then they clash. They can't meet, they can't communicate, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I know who I am.
Yeah.
I'm here to service. I'm
Yeah.
very patient. I teach people perseverance. So obviously, the first person who's going to have the perseverance is myself. Because how can you be a beacon of light when you don't do the right thing, right? So obviously, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Anyway, but she wouldn't listen. She took off, and I don't know what she feels now. She probably feels silly. But the point is that what happened? What do you think happened? This was not her, because why would she be? I know she was afraid of being things terminating, not going through the stuff that she was so enthusiastic. I was going to involve her in my, some of the stuff and give her more spiritual stuff to do and all that. You know what I'm saying? There
Mm.
are a lot of people requesting to join the group and all this stuff, which I'm delighted to see. They're really coming into this altruistic, the service-oriented thing. It tells you frequencies going up, up, up,
Yeah.
up. But that's the last thing.
Yeah. What I've seen, what I observe with people also when they go into this self-discovery, it's for a while for people it's hard to believe that they actually are who they are, and
Absolutely.
in that process you start losing also friends. People look at you like, who is this person becoming, what is he or she talking about, etc. So you start losing the friends, the comfort of, all that, where you had a comfortable life, you had your friends, you had your neighbors in the world, and suddenly you feel very lonely. And people start feeling very, very, very lonely in this period of transition, and then fear starts to creep in, and then there's an opportunity for them to pull you back in, and it's going to this transition zone. That's, as you say, the perseverance to, what people say sometimes, seeing is believing, but in this case it's believing is seeing, and that's what it's about. Believe in yourself, believe who you are, the divine human that you are, and follow the path, follow your heart intuition, and you will get through this no man's land.
What you're saying, Rudy, is quite a valid point for sure, but it's a little bit of a different context because yes, true. There's I've spoken of. There's a written papers about ascension symptoms that addresses this. That be careful that you're going to have your relationships are going to change with your family. You're going to feel lonely. Da 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 da. That's a very valid point. But my question from you was this: a person who's full of fire and shows herself and proves to me because we had actually a trial run to see if she can do it
Okay.
because of some of the things, that lack of confidence or whatever. And she she was confirmed that she can do it, and she's very very excited. There's one thing you have to take care of. That's it. There's one thing, and I'm not going to get into this because people get into these petty things. I don't have time for it. If you want to look at it on the Facebook, you'll see what people, you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
It was basically about certain way of appearing on the video, which I did not think it was proper. Okay, because we want to give good impression to people. Okay, we want to exude calmness, tranquility, things like this. We don't want wild stuff, you know. And also, it's out of place. You're not here for your looks. You're here for reading a paper, for for understanding the paper, questioning, getting some spiritual education, enlightenment. Okay, so suffice it at that. I'm just saying she was not rejected, not discarded, not worthless. God forbid if any of that stuff is. Okay, but she just goes berserk. Now, I understand it is a fear of failure, okay, and saying,
Yep.
oh, I'm not going to make it, I'm not going to do it, but you weren't told you can't do it. Who is talking to you in your ears that you're worthless, that you're not going to make it, that you're not going to do it and stuff? Certainly not me. Do you see what I'm trying
Yeah.
to tell? So there is another element,
Hmm.
and the person does not recognize that and doesn't want to say that. Oh, yeah, sure. I even told her, you're being subject to a parasitic feeding. Be careful. This is a parasitic attack. There's no need for that. You and me, nobody else. But you know what I'm saying? They can't understand this concept,
Yep.
They put everything as fights, You know what I'm saying? People have lovers quarrels, and they have friendly quarrels, and they have enemy quarrels, and all that. They look at all that stuff. There is something that exasperating the situation. Because if you take a deep breath and say, hey, I am as determined as I was yesterday. I am as good as yesterday. I'm as worthy as yesterday. Nobody's going to tell me this. And let me see, are you telling me this? Ask me. Don't say it. And when I actually say, no, 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 listen to it. Who is telling you this, Rudy? This is a very, very good example in, so to speak, our psychology. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
That we see there is a third element. So this thing that we started talking about, or you, I think you brought it up, that basically that we're not alone, and the negative aliens that are here, the knowing that they're here, it's main part of the healing. Because if she had thought 1 second, wait a minute, okay, if that's the case, it's not going to happen. But she doesn't want to. See, they mimic your inner voice. You see how devious that is?
Yep.
They know your frequencies, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and they are programmed. These things are programmed, AI. Because, by the way, every person's tagged. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Especially with somebody who has a history of these kind of self-destructive behaviors. And I'm not going to go through what it was. You can read about it again.
Mm-hmm.
In those slides, I explained it. You know what I'm saying? That's not the case. They're tagged. That means those parasites, they keep coming back incarnation after reincarnation after reincarnation, because that's their feed source. They're not going to let go.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's number one. Number two, I learned a lot about this from my own finding validity of all the things that come to me that I have to understand. So I understand, I write about it, but now I even understand more because you see examples of it. It's like a laboratory. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I don't want to be in a lab, but you're put in a lab. Are you with me?
Yes.
So and the other thing that I want to tell you that I think was very detrimental in this case was because this person was going somewhere. And the parasites who tag you, they don't want that.
Yep.
They don't want that. They want to derail you. They want to put you back in the gutter. And she was improving. I was very proud of her, actually. That so much energy she put in, despite her own personal family things and children, things like this. So, as you can see, I actually have a bit of admiration for her, for
Mm-hmm.
herself.
Absolutely.
The only thing that I'm disappointed is giving in. But you know what? That's what's going on.
Yeah.
So we need to know this. We need to know this. These are not, don't sit down and there make excuses for yourself, feeling bad about yourself. Or the other thing that people do is victim consciousness.
Yeah. People feeling guilty.
Because in this particular case, she was trying to make me as an aggressor, oppressor, some male guy who's tell her not to do things. Is this the guy who started out with you and put so much time with you? Why would I not do it now when I want you to record?
Mm-hmm.
Because I put, you know what I'm saying? Because
Mm-hmm.
I like to put that out for people. It's just like now we're going to this and say, Rudy, forget it. I'm not going to even release this thing.
Mm-hmm.
After all the efforts you put in, it doesn't make sense, right?
Exactly. It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but they feel sorry for themselves and then they're dragged into the gutter. And you
Yeah.
know what?
It's
They
exactly
have
that.
the pattern though. They by the way, there is a comfort zone they've created artificially that have you heard the people say, oh, it hurts so good? That's a contradiction of term. It can't hurt so good. It hurts because you're used to it.
Exactly.
It feels good because you're used to it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a programming.
It's a program. Exactly.
Yeah.
No question whatsoever. So very, very wonderful, valid point, and I think we've learned from this, and it's very pertinent to these cases. This parasitic stuff is I believe it's like a science. It's a good
Mhm.
thing for Isabel to master it from every angle. How these parasitic things, they're devious and they're beyond our level of comfort zone. You know what I'm saying? But you have to understand them intelligently, in a way, scientifically, but most important, intuitively in your heart. And then that becomes the new science. That becomes the new thing. Not this garbage stuff from Freud that everybody wants to sleep with their mother and kill their father. What kind of a garbage is all that?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah. All right.
anything
Uh,
else, my friend?
I think we are okay for today. We can pick up the next chapter and soon. So it was very enlightening, and I think I hope it will bring clarification to a lot of people, and it will help to take them on the right path. So thank you for everything you've done, and I was
Thank you.
was my pleasure, and I look forward to the
It's
next.
always my pleasure to give service. But let me just clarify something before we go.
Yeah.
Is this was actually a very long paper in 4 sections,
Hmm.
and I divided it, and you read part one. Okay, but it continues on into their nefarious strategies, and then particularly go to mind control. Now, I've written other papers on mind control, and I'm going to write on specific mind
Hmm.
control. Now, actually, I've written, but I've published them. You know what I'm saying? They're
Yeah.
not complete. They're not. And then there's a recapitulation, which basically brings all of the mega, all this. So there's 4 sections, and so I just wanted to make that clear. So next time, we'll look forward to have Rudy back and hopefully read the rest of them until the whole thing is done. But it is the type of paper, because it's so general, it can inspire a lot of conversation, a lot of discussion.
Yeah.
Of course, we're not going to get to the nitty gritty of the different types of mind control, but how it is done, basic, the
Hmm.
foundation, how it works, that kind of stuff. Next, I think it would be our next one.
Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect. Let's do
so
that.
thank you very much, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. I wish you a nice weekend, and I look forward to our next conversation. Thank you.
And I too. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.